All right, hello everyone. My name is Ben Jones. I'm here at the Tableau conference in New Orleans. I'm here with Giorgia Lupi of design agency Accurate, and she's also the author of a couple great books here our attendees have been super excited about. Observe, Collect, Draw, as well as Dear Data. And so, how are you doing, Giorgia? Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Ben. Hi, everyone who's following us. I'm doing very, very well. It's such a pleasure to be here. This conference is fantastic.
Well, I know our attendees have been super excited to meet you. You had the book signing going on there, and you just gave a session this morning, right?
Yeah, this morning.
Tell me a little bit about that. You know, kind of what were the key points that you were trying to make to the group here?
Sure. So I created and I crafted a talk for the Tableau community that was really, I would say, about the arc of my work life so far and what I've learned in the world of data and data visualization, showing many projects around this idea that I've been thinking about lately, that is data humanism, which is my way to hopefully reconnect data to what it really stands for, which is always our lives and behaviors. And so I guided the audience through many different projects, both projects from my company Accurate and my more personal projects, really highlighting what made me distill these ideas into data humanism. And everything will be online, so you'll be able to catch the talk.
That's right, yeah, you can watch those videos. So let's talk about maybe one of those projects. Let's maybe dive into the one where you were working with a guitarist, Kaki King, right? Tell me about that project and how that went and what you learned about it.
Sure. Well, I mean, Kaki King is an incredibly talented composer, musician, guitar player, and we started working together actually on a design project where John Maeda, design guru John Maeda, called us to collaborate on a brand identity project actually for the 200 years old anniversary of the Hennessy, the Cognac VSOP edition. And so we started working together, and I started to understand how music and what Kaki does with her hands on their guitar can be for me input for data collection and data visualization. Then we kept on collaborating, and we also composed some musicalizations of data collection that we did. But unfortunately last year something pretty bad happened to Kaki and her family, because her daughter, Cooper, 3 years old daughter Cooper, got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called ITP, where practically her body attacks her platelet. And so it's a disease that can lead to spontaneous bruises, and so Kaki needed to really observe what was going on her daughter's skin, and we started together 4 months of data collections where inputs from Cooper test lab were in the data collection, observations from Kaki on her daughter's skin, but also all of that was going on Kaki's life. And so we mixed very different types of data, lab tests, so medical results, observation from Kaki on her daughter's skin, but also the feelings and the sensations. So really data that normally don't go together. And then we musicalized and visualized this 4 months of very personal journey in a way that we hope can inspire empathy and can make really people connect to this very personal journey, but only told through data. And you know, we had so many interesting responses, and people were very moved by a project that we only told through data, a story that we only told through data. And I believe that in general, this project made me crystallize in my mind the importance of the data that we don't see, the data that is not already in form of data, but are the things that can make any type of hardcore data, such as medical result and things that are really already there, the thing that really can translate it into things that we can, human beings, reconnect to, which are details of our lives.
So a lot of people think of data as a spreadsheet or a database at a hospital somewhere.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is you're able to actually keep records, personal records of things about how she was feeling at Cooper, and combine those together?
And make them together. I mean, Ben and I were talking about it yesterday on a conversation. I think that I always like to remind people, even our clients sometimes, something that can sound so obvious, but we all tend to forget it, which is data does not exist. Because data, it is an abstraction of reality that we human beings created because we couldn't store life on a hard drive. Mm-hmm. And so we created this way to record our experiences that then can be, definitely communicated in form of a spreadsheet and then a data visualization, but before the spreadsheet, there's always something that is about our human reality. And then in this approach, every type of data then to me gets more meaningful, and also your audience, people who can read your data, can relate more if you're really able to work with data, focusing on what it represents rather than the number itself.
So it may be strange news for the folks at a data conference, but data actually does not exist.
This is how I would think about data.
So really we're talking about how it's a representation of reality, right?
Yeah.
And then when you can connect with the reality, you can make use of that data. So that was really what your project with your friend Stephanie Posavec was all about, right? Where you kind of really took this idea that data can be something about your own personal life.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this project, which is the Dear Data
Dear
book.
Data,
I'll
absolutely.
Just try not to spill the water here.
Yeah,
okay,
and I wish
we go.
Stephanie and Kaki were here. I mean, I'm always
There
talking
we
about
go.
collaborations. So Dear Data was a project that now became a book, and then also our second book, Observe, Collect, Draw, again in collaboration with Stephanie, is like really heavily based on the response that we've seen from the community from Dear Data. And actually, Stephanie and I didn't know each other before starting
Oh, is that
Dear
right?
Data.
I didn't know that. You never met face to face?
We met twice face to face at another conference where we were both speaking about like analog data collection and also the power that data can have to make us reflect on our human life. And we both have this very handcrafted approach to data, and we decided that we needed to collaborate, and we challenged the idea that we challenged the idea of what data even is. And our main question was: is it possible to get to know another human being through data only? And so for 52 weeks, we didn't communicate in any other way rather than sending each other postcards of weekly personal data collection from across the ocean, because Stephanie lives in London. And we were investigating very mundane topic, from the interaction with our partners to the compliments that we received, the sound of our surrounding. And in over 52 weeks, composing a portrait of ourselves and the other person only through this small data. And what we realized very vividly is that, every week we didn't only count the activity, like the thoughts or what we were doing, but we added so many personal details about what was the situation, what was the context, the feeling. And we realized that the context of any type of data collection is as important, if not more, as the actual activity that you count. And I mean, there's so many things that I can tell you about the Dear Data project. What do you think, Ben, that was particularly interesting for you about it?
Well, I think it's amazing. One thing you do with it is you're really creative about the way you decide to encode the data, right? So, it isn't just like standard bar charts and line charts. You're really getting creative and creating, different types of very just artistic expressions of your week.
Yeah.
And that I think is fascinating, right? Because we're all trying to figure out, a lot of times when we talk to people in the BI world, it's, what's the chart type I'm trying to choose for my presentation? And I think you kind of push the boundaries for us with this project by helping us see maybe some different possibilities and ways that people can get creative and still also tell both a accurate story, but also then a visually interesting one, right? So I think that was for me, that was a really valuable part of the project that I enjoyed. But then also, like you said, that's great, but at the end of the day, it's about your life and what's going on. And this is something that for someone who's learning, maybe helps them think about data in a whole different way.
I agree.
So tell me more about that. I know we had chatted about that earlier, right? That this is a way to really get people to reduce their level of anxiety about learning data, because it's actually about something real and personal they can connect to.
Absolutely. I feel that sometimes people are afraid of data or scared from data and by data, because you see all of these aggregations that cannot really reflect an individual human being. But when you start to create type of data collection and visualizations and projects that can make really people relate to what you're doing, because they feel like as individual that they could be the same person there, they can see themselves in a situation, well then data starts to become less scary, less big, less in general less scary. And I also believe that the analog part of it was really important for the thing that you were mentioning in the beginning, because we didn't have any software, we didn't have any shortcut, and so of course all of the visualizations were done by hand, and therefore very crafted for the specific data we were working with. So we were really representing the content for the week, as opposed to relying on charts that you can pick out of a tool, and that also made the representations very unique.
So you weren't limited perhaps by pre-built software settings. So when you would visualize and sketch out your week and drop it in the mailbox to Stephanie, and then you'd get hers back, would you find that you had sometimes done something similar, or was it pretty unique and you got to take a whole different look at it, or how'd that work out, right?
Well, sure, this is a super interesting question. I also need to say that every week we only agreed upon the main topic of the data collection, but then the actual type of data that we would go and collect sometimes were really different.
And you wouldn't compare notes during the week. You wouldn't
No.
talk to her at all. So
No,
you'd be
no,
waiting
no.
to get that. So you're thinking to yourself, this is how I thought to do it.
Yeah, I was so
And now
curious
I-
every time. I do really remember that I also rediscovered the pleasure of checking my mailbox as I got home. And sometimes, I mean, I was like peeking and opening it up, and if I saw a part of our postcard, I would pick it up and like take it hiddenly upstairs until I, had the time to pour a cup of coffee and to take my time to read it. That was for us our time to spending time with each other, really. And then I feel like progressively we influenced each other. So, for example, Stephanie has a very, as I would describe it, like circular and radial mind, and so most of her visualization runs around like circular type of shapes, whereas most of mine are more linear, more like score, type of visualizations, and like over time we definitely
Started to influence each other.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, that's really
So, and that's what this observe, collect, draw. So the idea here is that everybody else can do similar kinds of things, right? I mean, there's nothing preventing someone else from doing the
Absolutely.
same kind of an activity,
activity.
And to draw about their own life. So what's the response? This was only published, about maybe a few weeks ago, right?
1 month ago.
A month ago. So what's the first reaction you're getting from people that have bought this book and are starting to use it? What are you hearing from the readers?
So far we are really excited because we've seen so many people posting their activities online, and I also needed to say that the reason why the second book, it's actually a journal for everybody to visualize their data and journal their data, it is because after the data we've seen so many people, like not even designers or people who can work with data, that learned about the project and wanted to experiment on themselves, and even like small kids, like teachers, could use this format to teach their students the words of data. And Stephanie and I have been asked so many times to teach workshops, and so we thought, there's an opportunity to create a platform and a guide for everybody to do so. And so the journal is structured in a way where in the beginning you'll learn how to see data all around you and learn how to also not be afraid of a blank page with some basic activities, and then the major part of the book is actually guided activities like what we did for Dear Data. And in the very end, there's also a part that is completely free, that is a craft your own visual language, and so you can do exactly what you say, what you want to do, not guided from us. To be completely honest, this book, for me at least, is way more exciting than the Dear Data book, because the Dear Data project was a project, around ourselves, whereas here, it feels like a book that has a life of its own, because everybody else will actually fill it with their days and their lives. And so far, the response has been really, really
And so
nice.
people are posting what they're doing when they like this one right here, number 24, is about emotions.
Yeah.
To use, you pay close attention to your feelings, and then you can see for the folks there on Facebook and the website, you can see they can color in their emotions throughout the course of time. So people are posting these right now, right?
Sure.
On Instagram
They
and
are.
Twitter.
And at the very beginning of because we're so curious to see how people will use it. At the very beginning, there's a page where we encourage people to use the hashtag Observe, Collect, Draw and post their pictures, so people are doing it. There's also been some Tableau community context around it, and also for the month of October, there's this challenge called Ink October, and people are picked up this challenge by doing the Observe, Collect, Draw activities. I mean, honestly, we're really, really excited.
So if you go to Instagram or Twitter, hashtag Observe, Collect, Draw.
You'll see,
is,
examples
how you can
of
see
it.
what your readers are creating with it. Awesome. Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
know.
Ben.
I've had conversations this week with people who have said they sit down with their kids and go through the book because the children and people learning. And even us that are, been working with data for many years, it helps us see it in a different way. So, yeah.
Well, I've seen so many parents who wanted to use it with their younger audience, their younger kids, which was not our initial demographic idea. But it's again interesting to see that. We are all data collectors inside, from a young kid to a 30, 40, 50 years old person. It's all about getting more curious about, the things that interest us and using this curiosity to investigate our lives, and then the data we collect as a creative material for our visualization.
Love it. So there are two more projects. We got a little more time. I want to talk with you about, because to me, when I look at these two projects, I think about them, and these are things you've done recently. One, to me, sort of shows, or makes me feel about like the negative side of the internet and what it can do and the things and the ways it interferes or maybe casts a shadow over our lives. And the other one is the exact polar opposite, where it really gets to how we can use the internet and and computing to just look forward to an even better future. So let's start with the negative and then go to the positive.
Yeah.
Makes sense? Okay, I like that. So you worked with the Knight Foundation recently, right? So tell me about this project you did with them to really get into, kind of maybe a darker side of the internet.
Sure. So, I mean, and these are projects that I've been doing with an amazing team at my company, Accurate. And so all of the projects that are not the more artistic one that you can see, the more hand-drawn one, I have the incredible honor, and I'm so lucky every day to work with a really talented team of designers and developers at Accurate. And so for this project that is online right now, I think that you can still access it from the Knight Foundation homepage. So we partner up with them, and they had already commissioned a study on how misinformation spreads online before the presidential election of 2016, but also after that. And so they've been working with researchers both at NICE and at different other research institutes, crafting this very, very long paper that really looked at how misinformation spread, especially on Twitter, and so relating the websites that linked to fake news in many different parts of the political campaigns, but also after, to how the bots tweeted about
10
it.
million tweets, in fact, right? From these 700,000 Twitter accounts.
Absolutely. And so the paper that actually was presented to us as a brief was a very thorough and well done paper, but not very accessible to the general audience. Right. So what we did for them is we created an interactive narrative, a data visualization that is very accessible online, playing with the metaphor of the flock of birds to help people understand the very mechanical and unnatural behavior of a bot linking to fake news as opposed to like human being who tweets, because that was the entry point for them to understand, even how we can spot who can maybe link to fake news. But without getting into the details of the project, because it's very hard to describe it if you don't see it online, but I feel that as visual communicators who work with data, in this case, our job needed to be to make a very technical and important research available even for the general audience who maybe don't want to spend more than 5 minutes looking at it. And so we try to distill, together with the Knight Foundation and the researcher, to distill the core messages and transform it into interactive scrolls actually that can help them really understand the passage of time and how misinformation spread, and also how actually in terms of bot and fake news, nothing really changed after the presidential election. It's just still pretty much there.
It's been going on. And so the visualization with the birds helps you see the difference between an organic, like a human being in the flow, versus a more rigid kind of predictable
Absolutely.
bot
And
behavior.
then you can kind of like get into the depth of what are the websites that have been linked, pro-Trump or not pro-Trump, even the different hashtags that have been tweeted. So it can be like as simple in the very beginning to make you understand the concept of, a bot, fake news, but also then you can really get definitely deeper if you want into really understanding the research.
Got it. So it's really, and the goal there again really is to take this amazingly thorough research, but one in which maybe not a lot of people are going to get through the PDF file of a few dozen pages, right? As amazing as the information is in there, and bringing it to them in a way that's more visual and accessible, and even maybe in some ways just visually appealing to work with.
Absolutely, and this is to me is the most exciting part, because one could say, but why would you even want to work with the metaphor of the flock and like rebuilding the clock? I do believe that there's a value in getting people interested in a topic because they see maybe a visualization or interaction that is really appealing, because then this is the means to get them interested in the content as well. So I feel we as visual designers have this power right now to do that without simplifying or oversimplifying the research, but like making it more accessible through making it more engaging.
So what are we doing as visual designers to get their attention and draw them in? So the reader is interested in finding out more about what's there.
This is my opinion.
And using design techniques to do that. I mean, so with that project with the birds, like what would you look at and say, well, here are one or two elements that I used to really get people's attention?
Yeah. Well, again, it's hard to explain it without showing you what we actually mean. But so the idea that you can start to follow something that is rhythmically going on, and then as you scroll, this movement, and then you start to see that like it's really regular, but then like human beings start to appear, and this sort of mandala that then shapes around the clock start to become more organic. This is one thing, so that you can kind of really want to follow and want to know what's happening. The other thing that we did is that everything is scroll based, so you, the user, are building the visualization as you scroll. So
Got
like the
it.
visualization, it goes on over time about how this misinformation spread, but you need to activate it. And so you're also really actively part of this, as opposed to scrolling a thing that's already there. You're making it happen. So these are the two sort of like tricks that we use primarily.
So you interact, and the reader interacts in a way that actually affects what happens and what they see.
Yes.
So they feel like they're participating. Got it. Instead of having something shown to them.
Exactly.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, let's switch to this really hopeful. So you worked with the Google team and the News Initiative team to build this really cool app that anybody can go to the iOS or Android store and download, right? So tell us about this app you built. What were you trying to accomplish with it, and how did you go about doing that?
Absolutely. So it's called Building Hopes, and we released it last week. So it's a collaboration with the Google News Initiative. Simon Rogers works there, and also a collaboration with Alberto Cairo, who's like a data visualization guru who advises them for the more experimental project. And so Google News Lab sits on top of millions of Google Trends data, meaning what people look for on Google. And their brief, when they work with creatives or designers, is always to find different ways to have people interact with this data. So very open and experimental brief. And last year, a couple of years ago, we did a project with them for the working on the U.S. presidential election. And after that, after the second time that we wanted to take a look at their data, we decided to work on the concept of hope. And so it's a pretty experimental application that through augmented reality lets you select things, concepts, and ideas that you're hopeful for by really seeing rocks, physical rocks floating around you in augmented reality. So ideas you might be hopeful for, as for example, medical discoveries or education or artistic expression, my personal finances. Actually, things that we've found are also Google entities, which means like things that people normally look for on Google.
Common search terms, common topics
search terms,
that people are
that
already looking for.
Exactly. But so the idea is that you'll pick up these ideas that you're hopeful for, you give a weight to them, so you decide how much you're hopeful for them, and then the system craft a hope sculpture. Imagine like a totem, like a sculpture of rocks, where the dimensions and everything is really reflected on the data collection that you're doing on yourself, and then you can physically place this sculpture in a place in the world through augmented reality, and then it will stay there. So if somebody else is, are
they
going
by,
around,
they can
see it. And this is the pretext then to have people access Google Trend data on the topic of their choice. And so if you have a sculpture made of like 8 rocks, then you can like by really physically moving around access Google Trends data, which was the request of our clients on this topic. And it is a totally experimental process, but our idea there was to encourage people to take a stance on what they think about the topic before letting them look at any type of data, because the creation of meaning in any type of data or situation is very personal, and we wanted to have them think critically about the things that they're going to then look for with this very experimental metaphor. And in terms of data visualization, it was also interesting because the space of augmented reality gives you so many things that you can work on. For example, how close you are to a chart, it can help you reveal less or more information. The rotation and speed of elements can be material that you can use for visualizing different type of data. And so again, it is a completely experimental project. But
so the rocks can actually rotate in
they
place.
rotate. The rock rotates.
And they're very colorful too, right?
They have different colors in terms of the different categories. And so like technology, education, like the categories are the macro categories of the data. The rotation of the rock, the direction is if the Google Trend data is going up or down, and then the speed of the rotation is the value of actually how much
it's changing.
Yeah.
So if a rock is spinning very quickly in one direction, it's
it's like
changing
peaking
up or down.
in a way or down.
And so I'm using my phone. I'm on, so I can go to Google. I can go to iOS or Android.
And download
it's called Building Hopes.
Building Hopes.
Building Hopes is the name of the app, so you can go get it.
Or if you don't want to download the app, because we know that not anybody wants to download another app on their phone. There's a web version that is like buildinghope.es.
So you can access with a dot between the. Okay, got it.
Exactly. You will not be in augmented reality, but you'll still, can build your sculpture of rocks and explore others.
And you can see what other people have placed in different spots.
Also, in your particular rock, you not only then sculpture, you not only access Google Trend data, but you see how many other people were hopeful for the same concept. So this project is another, in a way, data collection, completely anonymous, because people can just decide to name their totem, like sculpture or not. But it is another way to get information in general for how people
So
are
where are
hopeful
people
for.
placing? You can actually look at that from a data point of view and see where people are choosing which rocks they're picking more often than others.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So what are you seeing out of the initial sort of, because this is fairly new, right?
It's fairly 1 week.
We're talking about a week. Any kind of like usage already? What are you seeing out of the gate?
I think that, right now people are engaging a lot with the experience of building the rocks and placing it and like sharing it because there's a share button. And I feel that, I don't have any grand insight in terms of the data collection already, but I feel that like people have started to see, hopefully, that data can also be playful. Mm-hmm. And again, the more that we can experiment with unusual context as designers, the more I feel that you can reach audiences that were data skeptical before.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And they wouldn't have normally seen this as a data-driven thing. They may not see themselves as a data
Absolutely,
person,
but then you're building a sculpture out of data, and then because you started to play with augmented reality and you got like really into that, then you can access Google Trend data, which is something that probably you wouldn't have accessed online just by going to the Google Trend page.
They wouldn't have known to even kind of do that kind of a search. So you're just really creating a bunch of data geeks then, aren't you? That's what you're all about.
That's
I like
my hope.
You have a hope, have a rock for that one.
Oh yeah, of course.
But again, I love that you kind of have like a project that covers maybe, I would say, the negative side of technology, but then also one that on the opposite side covers that real positive side. So that to me, is great because you're covering as a design agency a lot of scope and breadth of topics. So.
Yeah, what I also would say is that, and again, this might sound banal, but sometimes we can forget it. Technology is always only a means, it's never the point. No design project should be led by technology or data. It should be led by a story, an idea, and then technology and data are mediums and tools available for us. And even, augmented reality, it is really, we've done 2 projects so far with augmented reality, this one and another one that is more on the really physical space in Milan. But, that for us was both of the projects were ways to experiment on how people can have more personal interaction with data and how maybe fostering the space of augmented reality, like the physical space, can lead to different again, interaction and experiences with data, but it was never about let's do something with AR because AR is popular. It's more like, what is that AR can enable us to do that we cannot do in terms of meaningful experiences and interaction without it?
So start with the human experience in mind.
This is at least this is our point of view at Accurate, and this is our approach.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I think that resonates with a lot of people too, as we're seeing, with the responses to the books, as well as just, I think just on a, on a personal level, you understand the impact, and it isn't about the technology or the data, like you said, right? It's about the, people's lives and how that's being affected. So, a couple minutes left here. So maybe leave our viewers here with a few, just what are tips you have for people that want to get into or start interacting with data in this way that they feel more personally connected to? Other than kind of getting going with these, your books and journaling, What are some other practical things someone can do to?
Well, absolutely. I feel that everyone can start with the simplest thing, which is a personal data collection. So data that are collected from your lives. And there are different tools that you can use to collect data. There's this amazing reporter app that Nicholas Felton, another friend of ours and incredible designer, created that can help you actually record your data. But any time that you start a personal data collection, you should start with very clear questions in mind. So what is it you're curious about? What is in your life, in your relationship, in your pattern of thoughts that you're curious to explore? And these needs to drive the entry point. It's really hard to collect a bunch of data at a time. Right. I would suggest to do something as we did with Dear Data, which is like one subject at a time. Pick one thing. Another thing that I would suggest, that I always do it every evening, this is even easier. It's not like tracking things, every time that happen, but like before the end of the day, answer to 3 questions, 4 questions. For me, the question, for example, are what was the highlight of the day? What were you happy about? What was missing? And what are thoughts to, make your life, not your life better, but like what would have made this day better? Very simple thing that over time not only can build a data set, but can get you more in tune with the passage of time, more aware of, what you did in that specific day, and more aware of your thoughts. And so this is really simple. You do that once a day, and it's a form of journaling that is more structured and probably even easier for people who are not used to write. And that could be one thing. Well, then, in general, you can find data everywhere. I spoke this morning about a project that I did for the Museum of Modern Art last year, where I designed a pretty huge data visualization that was closing a show on fashion, and I didn't have any data. I only worked on really heavy text-based material that was the curatorial process for it. But it's all about entering any type of unstructured pool of information with some questions that can help you craft a data set.
And you were telling me the other day, so this is a huge display in MoMA in New York City.
It was there, yeah.
And you would go sit there sometimes, wouldn't you? Tell me about that experience. You go hang out in the gallery with your art on there, and what did you notice when you went?
That was really nice. I mean, the place was up for 6 months in the 6th floor lobby, 20-foot tall wall, and I really loved to get in there and sit quietly in the back and see what people were doing it. And so there was a legend on the left and a visualization on the right, which is pretty huge. And I really loved seeing people who took a picture of the legend so that they could have it in front of them in their phone as they were.
They literally had to physically move over,
yeah.
So they would actually take a photo of the legend,
yeah.
Go over and then
go over it. So the thing that can happen is that a visitor could exit the exhibition, look at this thing, not understand that it's data, maybe take a picture because mindlessly look at it's beautiful, and then they go away. But then there were people who stand there for, I'm not kidding, Ben, 30 minutes, really seeing it with the catalog in their hands, and
right.
I mean really trying to
diving into it,
really diving
because
that was at the end of an exhibition, and so it was meant to be a reflecting moment for the audience. So I really love spotting people, interaction with our projects.
There, interacting with your own art.
Data people watching.
That's awesome. Data people watching. And then I guess just last thing here, just tell me a little bit about your background. How did you, it's just fascinating. I think a lot of people are very inspired by how you're encouraging them. So how did you get here? Give us a little bit of an idea of the journey of your own career, getting to the place where you are today, inspiring people in this way.
Sure. Well, I'm an architect at training. I started architecture. I have a master in architecture, but I never built any houses. I realized over the process of studying, first of all, I decided to study architecture because that back then it was my work to merge the need for rules and numbers and organization with my also need to express myself creatively and visually, and so at the time architecture felt like the right choice. And throughout all of my studies, I got very interested in urban mapping and the scale of the city, and really
maps and layouts.
And then I started to really realize that there are human beings behind and below the maps and all of the plans floor plans that we create. And I don't know, I feel very in love to the possibility of using data as a material for any type of exploration and then visual creation. And progressively, I've also been very lucky to meet up my current partners at Accurate. One of them is a sociologist, my other partner, who's also my husband, is a designer, and I'm an architect. And the three of us together and our particular backgrounds, I feel that really shaped the way that I work right now.
So 40 designers, accurate.it is the site.
Yes.
Dear Data is the book. Observe, Collect, Draw is book number 2. You can get involved and get it yourself. And for the folks that are watching, we got more coming. TC is almost coming to a close here, but we've got some more breakout sessions that you'll be able to watch right here on the site. And I just want to thank you, Giorgia. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ben.
And thank you for all that you're doing to help inspire the rest of us to really see data in a more human way. I'm very personally inspired by it, and so again, thanks for coming all the way down here to New Orleans to hang out with us. And
thank you
hope
for having
enjoy.
me. It was a spectacular experience.
Great.
Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Awesome. And everyone, thanks again. I appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.